Hey everyone, welcome to this talk on what's new with Civil 3D 2022. So my name's Nate Philbrick, and I'll be walking us through some new features with 2022, some of the new features that have come out in the last couple months. And this is presented by, on behalf of the company I work for, Topcon Solutions. So my name's Nate Philbrick. I'm an infrastructure specialist at Topcon Solutions in the greater Portland area. I'm an Autodesk certified professional in Civil 3D, FAA drone certified pilot. Previously, I worked at Autodesk as an infrastructure specialist, mainly in Civil 3D recap and InfoWorks. I'm originally from the New England area, to be exact, New Hampshire, and I moved out to Portland, Oregon for a job at Autodesk, actually. One of the things I really liked about the Portland area is the proximity to the outdoors. So I really like skiing, mountain biking, whitewater kayaking in the Pacific Northwest. And I definitely encourage you to reach out to me if you're ever in the surrounding area. Give you a little background about Topcon Solutions. Topcon Solutions is a direct sales retail division with 13 brick and mortar locations in the U.S. And we have one location in Portland, Oregon, one up in the outskirts of Seattle, and a few more in the Midwest and Northeast. And Topcon Solutions, primarily a hardware company, but also very involved as a partner with Autodesk in the software market as well. The division I mainly work in is the training. So we give trainings on Civil 3D, Civil 3D Essentials, advanced topics for Civil 3D, AutoCAD, and we also support a variety of issues and give service for hardware and software related issues. And Solutions is our middle name. So today's agenda. So we're going to go over new features with Civil 3D 2022. We're going to start a bit broad, and we're just going to go over some of the new enhancements, new features, mentionables. A lot of these are, par for the course. Some of the stuff is the same. Some of these new commands that you might want to check out, things like that. Quick things we can go over just to, touch on, but are still very important to workflows in Civil 3D. And then we're going to take a deep dive and do some product demonstrations of the three big features in Civil 3D. So the three big ones that came out with 2022 and maybe slightly previous with other ones is first one's connected alignments, came out in 2022. So it's just a more robust platform for control with intersection design. Second is Project Explorer. Project Explorer actually came out about this time last year, 2021. And we saw a lot of enhancements to that with the release of 2022, and we'll go over those as well, mainly in the pressure network department. And then the last thing we'll touch on, probably the biggest component of Civil 3D in 2022 that's been added on, is grading optimization. It's a super cool tool. It has what we call the optimizer, and it's computers running algorithms, designing preliminary surface grading designs, and really just helps you narrow things down in terms of what you want to do, what are the best options, and just gives you it's really easy to modify, and we're going to take a look at that. We'll go into a great product demonstration, and then we'll look at the features and what that can do. And moving along, so we're just going to, like I said, we're just going to go over some of the mentionables, the new features, maybe some new commands. And to begin with, let's talk about the versioning and compatibility. So with 2017 to 2018, we saw a file upgrade. So what that meant is that if you had a file in 2017 and you opened it in 2018, you would get that proxy graphics message when you open it back up in 2017. Those AEC, civil engineering, Civil 3D objects were in that proxy state. With 2022, the versioning remains the same. So what that means is that from 2018 to 2022, you can open a file and it's backwards compatible. That being said, there are some exceptions to that, and that the exception is the connected alignment feature, Civil 3D 2022. They're not backwards compatible. So you need to convert those to a fixed, use the convert to fixed command in order to revert that to a previous version. It's just because that Civil 3D 2022 is looking at features that Civil 3D 2021 previous can't see. So just keep in mind, if you're using the new connected alignment feature, you're not going to want to just open that up in 2021 or previous. You're going to want to use that convert to fixed command before going backwards. You may have noticed when you install Civil 3D 2022, there's a welcome screen in the bottom right. Start. It says, can you give us some feedback based on your industry? This isn't impacting your workflow in Civil 3D. It's not going to impact your profile or anything customized in that form. It's really for Autodesk to really be able to look at who's using our software and how can we tailor that to the user's experience. So they're just trying to understand how Civil 3D is being used and what updates to push, what enhancements to push, where to prioritize, backlogs in terms of where things are, where the software is going. So you may have noticed that, and it's you know, I would hope down the road that maybe we see some things get tailored specifically to each user's needs. So the installation experience. So the installation experience is slightly different with 2022. We see some components that are a part of it, and we also see some components that are separate add-ons with it as well. So first thing, the Autodesk Batch Save utility. That was a separate add-on. You'd have to add it into your installation. It's not that it didn't come with the installation, you just had to select it to install. Now with 2022, that comes automatically with it, so you don't have to worry about, did I install the Batch Save utility when I was installing Civil 3D. Storm and sanitary analysis, which is a separate, if you're unfamiliar, that's a separate application from Civil 3D. It's launched separately, so you go through your Windows key, search storm and sanitary, and that would be launching storm and sanitary analysis. This previously came with the Civil 3D installation, and now it comes separately. So you'll notice that you'll install Civil 3D 2022, and then you'll have an option to install storm and sanitary through the desktop app or at manage.autodesk.com. So you do need Civil 3D to install it, but it is a separate installation. One thing that's great for this is that if you ever have an issue with SSA in some sort of installation nature, launching, something not working, you can uninstall it without pulling all of Civil 3D off, which makes it a lot easier to be able to fix issues with SSA and not have to pull everything off. You'll notice that the storm sewers add-ons, the HydroFlow add-ons, which include storm sewers, hydrographs, and Express, are all now included with the installation. And the last thing you also notice is Dynamo is also included as well. So pressure networks, new features and commands. One thing you'll notice with how Autodesk has been going in the direction they're trending in is we're seeing a lot of enhancements, a lot of new workflows, a lot of changes for pressure networks. So the first thing that came out with Civil 3D 2022 is the regen pressure solid command. So this command basically just regenerates 3D solids for pressure network parts. The profile ribbon, consistent with the plan layout ribbon. So it's updated path for pressure networks to make it more consistent with the plan layout ribbon. Spanning labels created in plan and profile view. So you can create them in plan and profile view now. PVIs removed from overridden station ranges in profile view. So these PVIs that are set to static, when selected, clean up PVIs checkbox on the pipe run profile settings dialog box removes the PVIs from the overridden station ranges. And I'm just going to touch on the Civil 3D 2021.1 beta. So the update 3 for that came out yesterday. So what Autodesk does is they'll release these betas to the public through the Autodesk Infrastructures website. I have a link to that further down the presentation if you're interested. And what Autodesk does is they'll say, hey, we're going to release this beta. This is what we're thinking about including. If you'd like to test it, you can give us feedback on it. Now, one thing with the betas is nothing is included with Civil 3D until it is fully delivered. So Autodesk does reserve the right if they decide not to put something in or something like that. It's not set in stone that this will be the .1 beta, but for the most part, a lot of these things will be included. So I wanted to touch on where things were going with the beta, and as Civil 3D, and they've given updates for since it's been released in mid-April, that this is some of the things we should or very high potential to see. So the ability to add cut length and minimum flex radius in parts lists. One thing that happened with pipe runs, which came out 2021, is you could create a pipe run profile, and you could create a pipe run profile based on cut length. And it can be a little bit challenging to understand what your cut length is because you can't set it in the parts list unless you have it defined. So, for example, there's a few pressure network part lists or pressure network catalogs that don't have parts list defined, and when you would load that into Civil 3D, it just wouldn't display the cut length. So now you have the cut length displayed in Civil 3D, so you can make those adjustments so that your cut length is displayed appropriately. And the second thing is the ability to edit pipe runs. This includes a lot of different features. I just really included this in one bullet point. So you can slide appurtenances, you can rotate elbows. There's some you can add tees into pipe runs. I definitely encourage you to check out those release notes when they do come out, or check into the beta. But there's a lot of features that allow you to edit the pipe runs and then still maintain the integrity of them. And one thing to note with that .1 update there, generally updates can include a lot of stuff, or they can include like 1 or 2 fixes. With this .1 update, it looks like there's going to be a lot of fixes for Civil 3D, so I definitely encourage you all to go check that out. Okay, so the first big one that came out with 2022 is connected alignments. And what this does is it really just allows you to have a lot more control over those connected alignments. And so what they did is they added curve group combinations. You'll see here that there's a lot of different curve group types, and you can also set the parameters of those curves as well. There's also the ability to create curves greater than 180 degrees. You can create offsets in the parent alignment. So if you think like if you create that center line alignment, then you create that offset alignment, then you create that connected alignment. Now you can skip that offset alignment step, and that does make it a bit simpler when you're designing and eliminate the step. It also makes your corridor targeting a bit easier as well. And one thing I also like with this as well is the ability to preview. It's you don't have to say okay and create that connected alignment right away. You can preview it, see what it looks like. You're like, okay, I like what I'm seeing. No, I want to make some edits. This is a nice way to, so you're not doing Control Z and backing up a couple steps to try and backtrack a bit. And then the last thing I touched on previously, if you're going to the previous versions, 2021, 2020, anything previous to that, you're going to want to use that convert to fix command, because Civil 3D, the previous versions, are not going to be able to see this new feature. So I'm just going to play this video here. And what this video is released by Autodesk, and it touches on the features of connected alignment and what they can do. So Civil 3D, what's new for 2022, connected alignment. So we're going to see here we have some sort of intersection design, and we have some alignments that are crossing, and we're going to create a connected alignment right here. You're going to see that we have improved control. A lot of these features are the same, so the general design criteria, but this parameters tab is going to be new with these multiple different curve group types. And then you have options to edit these arc parameters, adjust the lengths, just make edits to the radiuses, those lengths as well. And you can create those and add those into your drawing. The next thing you can do with the connected alignments is, like I said, create those larger than 180 degree curves. So with the spiral curve spiral option, you can edit those spirals as well. Select OK, and then you can connect those to the profile crossing alignments based on the offset cross-set slopes. And then in plan view, you can dynamically control the grips, which is directly tied to everything else. So it just really is a great control to get real precise intersection design based on the exact parameters that you're desiring. So that's connected alignments in a nutshell. And then moving along here, we're gonna bounce into Project Explorer. So Project Explorer came out about this time last year. Autodesk likes to debut products before AU and show where the product is going. So one thing you'll notice with Project Explorer in 2022, some of the changes to it, is that Project Explorer is located on the Home tab now. It used to be buried in one of the other tabs and used to be a little challenging to find, so you'll notice that when you open Civil 3D, Project Explorer is right there on the Home tab. And mainly what's happened with Project Explorer is they're just enhancing the functionality of what is already included with it. And what we've seen with 2022 is the added support for pressure networks. And what this includes is display and edit pressure network information, edit multiple pressure network properties, include object sets for pressure networks, generate reports and tables for networks, parts, and pipe runs, compare pipe runs to other services and surfaces, and search for networks by name. And a lot of this is very similar to the features that are already included with the gravity networks. And one thing that you also notice is that one thing that was important for gravity networks is you had the ability to swap multiple gravity network parts at the same time. Pressure networks already has that included with Civil 3D. It's just done in plan view, so you're not going to be able to swap them in Project Explorer, but you'll be able to, so you can swap them in plan view, but all the other functionality is very similar to gravity networks. And then the second thing that changed with Project Explorer is the siteless feature lines. One thing that would happen is that if you had a feature line in your drawing that wasn't on a site, Project Explorer wouldn't pick it up. And now it'll pick it up, as you can see here, that first red box, that the feature line is there, and it's also placed on that none site. And then let's bounce over to Civil 3D. We're going to take a look at Project Explorer. We're going to generate a report for it with pressure networks to show you that workflow, show you what you can do with it. I'll also give a quick overview of, if you want to go the route of customizing your Project Explorer view, then we'll look at that as well. So jumping into Civil 3D here. So first thing I wanted to talk about is the pipe run workflow and what I meant by the parts list with that cut length. So, and what you're going to see here is this is what Autodesk has also fixed as well with that beta build, and or moving in that direction to fix. So you'll see here, you'll see here I have two pipes, and I just placed it's just two pipes, long pipes right over a hill, so we get some movement of the pipe trying to follow the surface. And what you're going to notice here, this first one here was created in 2021. And you'll notice that this pipe it has no cut length defined, so it doesn't follow the surface based on the cut length. And you'll notice in 2022 that it is following the surface now. One thing that I do notice that I find to be a little bit confusing is that if you go into your pressure network parts list, we go here, let's just go edit this part list. I'm just going to show you where that cut length resides. And then let's just edit this one, the pipes. So you see that this cut length is set at 20 feet. And this parts list that I have, this is where you can change that cut length. And this parts list that I'm displaying here, this is this HDPE parts list. So a lot of the parts lists that come with the Civil 3D installation do not have a cut length defined. So what it looks like happened is if you open up the content catalog editor, you can open up the pipes and see what the cut lengths are. And a lot of them don't have them defined, but then when you bring them into Civil 3D, they get assigned this 20-foot cut length. So I would encourage you to definitely make sure that what you want to have as your cut length is defined, so you're seeing the profiles displayed in the correct way. So one thing that Autodesk is working towards fixing, but also definitely make sure to do your due diligence to make sure that those cut lengths are defined. And so moving over to Project Explorer here. This is a fairly simple drawing here. It's one of the tutorial drawings. We have a gravity network, we have a pressure network, and corridor, and we also have a couple feature lines, one on a site, not on a site. So Home tab, Project Explorer, and we're going to launch Project Explorer here. There we go. And let me just try and make this as big as possible on this screen. Okay. And okay, here we go. And Project Explorer, so you can see that we have multiple tabs up here. This includes all the Civil 3D entities in the drawing. We've got assemblies, corridors, surfaces. And one thing you can do here is you can customize your Project Explorer view. So Project Explorer, this is all going to be your colors, basically how everything is displayed. It's not what content is displayed, it's how that content is. So you can make customizations with all that, vertical exaggeration, grid interval in the Z direction. All that can be edited in your preferences. In terms of your layout, this is where you can choose what content you want displayed in the Project Explorer window. There's a lot you can choose. There's a lot you can choose to hide as well. And one thing that I'm running it as the default. So the restore default command, you'll notice that it looks probably exactly like how mine is displayed. One thing you'll notice is that, let's say I go to my pipe networks here, pipe network, and get that 1 second to load. And you'll notice that there's a lot of blank columns. Some columns may not be necessary. So you can definitely customize things to what you want to have. And moving into what's new, the pressure networks right here. This is the new tab that you're going to see in Project Explorer. So all those features that are with gravity networks are very similar to with pressure networks now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that. I'm going to create an object set. We're going to create a pressure network report. We'll place it in Plan View and Civil 3D. And I'll show you how to create those tables, customizations if you want to go that route. And it's really just a great way to view your data and create tables easily. So this pressure network right here, pressure network 5, this is with that push on parts list that comes with the Civil 3D installation. It's got 9 pipes, 6 fittings, and it's 1 pipe run. And what we're going to do is we're going to say add to object set, and we're just going to create a new object set. It's asking for a new one because I don't have one created. So we'll just call this pressure network object set. And this is where it's going to ask you what action do you want the object set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say export to AutoCAD tables in model space. And then you have an option to select action type, manual, dynamic, actions triggered when associated objects are modified or erased. And then this is where I was saying where you can get into the customizations. So the layout style. I'm going to leave it as the default, but you can go in here, edit style, and then you can edit how the layout is portrayed. There's a lot you can do in here. One thing that's about the object set is the object sets aren't tied to a specific part. So you can have, it's not like pressure networks are the object set. You can have, for example, that gravity network in that same object set. Let's just leave this as the default. Oh, and one other thing with the object styles is you can save them, and then you can load them in so you can have your your set standards that you want your tables to look like and whatnot. And then so will you say use layout? We'll use layout so that's grayed out. And then table style, same exact thing. Customize that. You can load in your custom ones. So plenty of customizations you can do with those reports. And when we say OK here, it's going to say object sets added. There we go. New object set was successfully created. Now it contains 1 object. Okay, cool. So then if we go over here to the reports tab, you're going to see now we have a 1 here. That means we have an object set. And then here's the object set. So this is it. Action, export to AutoCAD tables, dynamic, model space insertion point. And then here's the pressure network. And then quick report to AutoCAD table. And then use layout. So we'll just leave it all the standard. Use Project Explorer table style. Use Project Explorer window. And then we're going to say OK. And then you're going to see down here on the command line, it says enter table insertion point. So I'm just going to minimize this here. And we're just going to come over here to some blank space. And you're going to see that created that table for that pressure network. So nothing that's really changed in terms of Project Explorer a whole lot in terms of what it could do when it first came out versus what it can do now. But there's just a lot of added features to it, pressure networks, siteless feature lines that are included. And moving along here, back to the presentation. Okay, grading optimization. This is by far my favorite thing that's new with Civil 3D 2022. I spent a lot of time playing around with it. It's definitely a bit different in how it works. It's got an optimizer. It uses a computer algorithm. It'll run for 10, 15, 20 minutes and just keep on optimizing that surface. It's a super cool tool, but it's definitely something that's a bit different. And we'll go over the process to create that project and what to look for, where it fits into your design needs and whatnot. So grading optimization is a great preliminary terrain tool optimization for designers. Utilizes an algorithm commonly referred to as the optimizer. Creates a surface based on defined constraints. So those constraints are in a polyline format. You have your lines and add those in, and then the optimizer will go through and pick like, okay, we can do this here, we can do that here. One thing that's nice about this is it eliminates manual grading tests according to customized object constraints. So you don't need to have an exact, it doesn't need to be perfect in what you're doing, but if you have an idea, this you can run the optimizer several iterations and get a real good idea of what would be the best scenario that minimizes cut and fill if you want. And what grading optimization does, it gives you the ability to efficiently create multiple grading design options for consideration. It's really easy to turn grading options off, turn them on, rerun the optimizer. You can send multiple surfaces back to Civil 3D, and you can just keep iterating it to get exactly what you want. You can easily modify the constraints. You can identify grading challenges early in your design process and identify scenarios minimizing material waste. And a couple of things that you do need before you get into grading optimization. And the first thing that you need is you need a surface representing existing grade. You need to define boundaries representing grading limit within the extent of the EG surface. So basically, what you're trying to grade needs to be within the EG surface constraints. Some idea of your drainage plan or direction. You can be pretty broad with grading optimization in terms of what you want to do, but a general consensus, or we're trying to go in this direction. You definitely need to have that before you get into it. And it's good to have. It's not fully needed, but additional line work, building paths, curb lines, drain lines. The more data you have in there, the more accurate your surface is going to be, and the better idea you can get of where grading issues may lie, or what's going to, or developing that design. Grading optimization layout. So there's two main entities of grading objects. First one's the grading object tools. So this is basically all the options for what you can create. So you're going to notice that, and you have the options to customize this as you go. So you could right click on this and click on the properties and customize them if you had a bunch of different grading objects that were going to carry the same standards. The second thing you'll notice that is part of the grading optimization panel is that the grading objects browser. What this displays is what is been created with the object tools. So for example, you see that top one there is building pad. None of these objects browser have anything in them, but the building pad will show a 1 next to it if you have one building pad defined in your drawing, or one pond, one curb, and you can have multiple of the same thing as well. So, and then the types of grading objects. So from that, grading object tools. So there's 3 different types of objects you can have in your drawing. The first 2 are points, and that's low point and bounded point. So a low point's lowest point in an optimized area, and a bounded point set an elevation point to a bounded target. These will be COGO points in your drawing. The second type of grading object is lines, and there's several different types of lines: a lined edge, bend line. Drain line is going to be pretty popular for your use. What that's going to define is your drain lines in your grading plan. One thing to note with your drain lines is it's important on how that line was drawn. So the first point to the end point is going to be the way it's draining, even though there's no 3D entities to it. So it's just important to make sure that how you're drawing those lines is how you're physically want it to drain. And one thing that that'll actually be part of 2 is curbs. So a curb can be a line, and it can also be a zone, which we'll get to in a second. And a reveal line used in conjunction with building paths to override elevations for items such as ramps, stairs, and truck wells. And then the last thing is zones. So zones are going to be one of the more popular things used, and there's several different types of zones. The qualifications for a zone is it needs to be a closed entity. So in any shape, but it needs to be closed versus just a line would just be a line in your drawing. And touching on the zones, a zone, the plane zone, is a number of bounded areas represented by a polyline. And they're layered in hierarchy of overriding criteria and behavior. So you can have multiple zones on top of each other. The second one's an exclusion zone. So it keeps items out of the grading. For example, if you didn't want to have a corridor graded, grading will not occur in those regions. Pond is an enclosed area that becomes a footprint for a wet or dry pond. Area of the pond can be static or dynamic, depending on side slope and volume parameters. So you don't need to know the volume of the pond. You can just punch in the parameters, and it gives you an option to say, like, is it flexible based on, is the volume of the pond flexible? And curb, so like that would be a closed curb zone. which would be like, say, an island or something like that. Building pad, closed polyline, which is a footprint of a building pad elevation. You can use the elevation to set acceptable elevation range as a design limitation. So if you have an idea of what elevation you want that building pad to be, you can punch that in. And you can level grading pad with option grades, surround elevation to smoothly to pad the elevation. Grading limit, that's going to be an important one that you define. The grading limit is the outermost limit for grading is the extent, so it's the boundary of your grading. You don't necessarily need it to run grading optimization, but it will try and optimize the entire surface, and you'll notice things will get real wonky. So you definitely want to have a grading limit in there. And parking lot, a zone with predefined depth of material setting and lower default slopes. Can be used with curb definitions to create an area with islands as well. Sidewalk, predefined depth of material, max and min slope, and then accessible path. So those are the main parameters for the grading objects used in grading optimization. One thing that is coming with we're seeing with the beta build for grading optimization is retaining walls, which are not a functionality right now in the main product, but should be in the near future. And we're going to bounce over quickly to grading optimization. I'm going to take you through a project that I've developed. The building pad with some sloping. We created a pond, and we got a sidewalk in there. I'll just show you my process for how I created it. So let me bounce out of here, and then let's go into this grading optimization. Okay. And this is a pretty cool project to me because I collected all this data, and it's at a school right near my house. So it's definitely cool to work on something that's close to home, and you can come up with some ideas that what would be around your house. So just to give you an idea how this data was collected. So I have a drone, and I flew the drone over this site, taking photos with a pretty good overlap, and then I brought that project into Recap Photo, stitched all those photos together, and then that Recap Photo project created that mesh file and that point cloud output. And then what I did is I used InfoWorks to create a surface in Model Builder. So I've just defined this region right here. If I zoom out here, this is the region I defined in Model Builder. And what Model Builder does is it creates that generic, it's a fairly accurate surface. It's not super accurate. And then what I did is I brought in that point cloud data and enhanced this surface region right here. And what you'll notice is when we start to display the contours, you'll notice that there's a lot more triangulation in that point cloud region. And so this region right here, as I was thinking of, how could I make a grading optimization design here? What would be a good idea? And I was thinking maybe some sort of athletics building in this region right here, a building pad sloping down from it. I wanted to have some sort of road or path driving up to it. So if you're driving like a lawnmower or an ATV of some sort, you can get back up to the building. And then I also put a sidewalk, walking around the perimeter of it. But it was definitely a fun project to play around with, and definitely learn the ins and outs of grading optimization. So I'm just going to go ahead and unload this point cloud now that gave you some background and we don't necessarily need it anymore. And this is my grading plan right here. We're just going to go through and add a few things to it. And let me close this here, and we'll leave that open. I'm just going to turn the surface on. So if I go, I'm just going to turn on the EG surface and surface. Okay, so you can see we have some contours in now. You can see those model builder contours on the outskirts. We have those more accurate contours where the drone imagery was added in. And this is my grading plan. These are all polylines created. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in some grading objects. So Analyze tab, you're going to see that we have, click on the grading options, we get the tool palette, and then we get the grading objects browser. And I already have a few things added in here. You're going to see I created a pond right here. I was thinking some sort of detention pond that's going to slope in down from the building, and it'll slope off the sidewalk. And close that here. And then one thing is I created a curb right here as well. And we'll just add in a few things here. And one thing that can be a little bit confusing is that when you add something in, there's no way to, it can seem like there's no way to get rid of it. One thing you have to do is you have to select that poly, And if you select this and then select the delete button, that's physically going to remove the polyline in the drawing. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to right click and then say remove curb. So that'll remove the curb entity from that polyline. And I'm going to go ahead and close the curb properties. So let's go ahead and add in a building pad here. So this is my proposed building pad area. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to building pad. Actually, let me deselect that. Okay, building pad. And it's going to say select objects to set as building pad. Say okay. Yeah. And then I'm going to give it an elevation. And I'm just going to say fixed elevation value. And you can, this is what I was saying earlier, when you can have an elevation range. So if you have an idea of the range, but I'm going to set mine right at an elevation of 13.5 feet. There we go. And then level grading with pad, create a smooth grading around the building pad footprint, reveal segments overriding this setting. I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to close this. And you're going to see here now we have that building pad included into our plan. I'm going to add in a grading limit here, and that's the extent of what we are grading. And zone 11, and I'm going to use customized slope constraints. One thing to note is that if you're trying to grade with a max slope of some sort, so say for example you want to grade with a slope of 3 to 1, that's going to be a max slope of 33%. And then you can have options for your min grade slope. Keep in mind you're punching in ranges, so then the optimizer is going to go through and it's going to say, okay, we can make this 20% or we can make it 10% or something like that. And then you have options for aligned surface or exclusive drainage. It's either one or the other. So an aligned surface requires that the triangles in the zone align themselves on a plane. This property cannot be combined with exclusive drainage. So what happens is if you select the align to surface, then select that, you'll notice that one's no longer enabled. And then minimum zone inclination guarantees every triangle on the surface has a min required inclination into a given slope. And when you set this, you're going to want to make sure that this grading limit is selected here. And then what we'll do is we'll say yes, we'll add break lines, and we'll close this. So now that we have a grading limit defined, let's see if there's anything else we need to define in this drawing. Okay, zones. And so this is when you can apply some zones to, and this one I said you can apply zones on top of each other and they're based on hierarchy. So let's go ahead and add a zone right here. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a flat area around the building pad that allows for, if you're just for use around the building, park that lawnmower, something like that. Work on that lawnmower. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go here down to zones, and then it's going to say select object to set as zone. Say okay. And then you have options here. You can use global constraints, customize slope constraints. What I was thinking of doing was I was going to do like maybe like a maybe like a 3% to a 1% slope. So we have some slope, but it's pretty level. So that's what I was thinking in terms of that table up top there. And then you have the same thing that was in that previous zone, the align the surface, exclusive drainage, whatnot. And I'm not going to go through and add all these just for time's sake, but you'll notice that this is the pond I've added in right here. There's a nice diagram when you create those ponds in terms of your berm, your depth, height of water, whatnot. And then here's a sidewalk I created right here. Oh, it's like the surface. Here's a sidewalk. And then I also added in some drain lines. You probably don't need this many drain lines when creating your grading plan, but I was going around the building. I wanted to slope down around it, so that's where I ended up adding them in. So, all right, let's bounce over to this other drawing here. So this one has a bunch of those grading objects added into it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get into the grading optimization optimizer. And let me just turn this up here. Let's go to surface properties, display. And then here, surfaces, surface properties. Okay, so this is the EG surface. I've already sent back the graded surface, but we'll take a look at that afterwards. So optimize. Then it's going to ask you which surface you want us to work with. And so we just selected that EG surface, and then you're going to see this grading optimization window start to launch. And this is our, you can see this is our drone surface. Then we have that broader model builder surface. You can see those drain lines are pointed away from the building. So when I said that's how you're going to want to draw first point to second point, that's the way it's going to drain. And then we have our building pad right here. And oh, there we go. And we have our building pad right here. Then we have our grade and limit properties. You can see all these features right here. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and start optimizing. So this button right here is optimize. So when you select this, it's going to start retriangulating. And what this basically says right here is we're just going to change your pond volume. And then you're going to see here that the surface starts to change. And then there's a lot of great visualization tools as you get working with it. So you can, so for example, you can display those triangles, and then you can see that things are starting to move, starting to think. It's starting to create that building pad and follow those drain lines. One thing that I find to be really helpful when you're working is this violation. So basically what this is if the slope is outside what your constraints were when you were creating those grading limits and all that, you can see where things are violated by. So for example, and then as the optimizer runs, you should be seeing less of those violations display. So for example, my building pad has a, let's see, let's find a spot that's not, that's red for a second. And then one thing you'll notice that it's like sometimes it'll fix things and then as it's figuring things out. So the slope is 0.14% and the max slope of the draining pad was set to 0%. So it'll work through that as things go. But that's, and then you can, for example, you can come over here, see like what's going on with my sidewalk. And, for the most part, you usually find that things are slightly, you can run this whole thing and you'll notice that things are slightly off, like, it's like 0.05% too small or too large or something of that nature. And then you can also display your cut and fill as well. And one thing that's also nice is when I was going through it, I was definitely deleting the grading objects from within Civil 3D versus doing it in the optimizer. So one thing you can do is you can, actually while it's running you can't, but if you were to stop running it, you can deselect the building pads from be running in the plan. So you can have multiple different ideas of what you want to do, and then you can change them and then re-optimize and change and re-optimize without deleting them and then re-adding them. And you can also change these constraints. You'll notice that they're grayed out. That's because it's optimizing based on those constraints right now, but if you were to stop optimizing it, then you could change these constraints, rerun it again. One thing that's the convergence plots, oh, those should be launching. Where are you? Well, the convergence plots should be launching, but if they were, what the convergence plots will show you is, it'll show you three things. It'll show you your cut and fill, it will show you your terrain smoothness, and the thing at top it'll show you is like a logarithmic scale. And what you want to see is that logarithmic scale trending downwards. And if it's trending down and then back up a little bit, that's totally fine, but you want to see it trending down. The closer to the bottom of the graph it gets, the more accurate your data is going to be. So I definitely encourage you to let it run, go get a coffee, let it run for 10-15 minutes if you're really trying to get highly accurate results with that final surface, and then you can then you can see those results. But definitely pay attention to that convergence plot, because when it starts going down to 0, gets near the bottom, that's when you know you're getting fairly good optimized results. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say stop here. I would definitely run this 10 to 15 minutes, but just for our time demonstration purposes, we'll just let this stop this right now. So if we go ahead and stop it, you can see these features are now no longer grayed out. We could change them and then re-optimize if we wanted to. But what I'm going to say is send off. So that closes the optimizer, and we come back into Civil 3D. And then we have options here. You can bring in feature lines. I'm not going to do that, but you can say we have that surface right here. And then you can create a new surface, or you can add that surface in. And then what you do is you select finish, and it'll add that surface in. So previously what I did when I let it run a lot longer, so I created this graded surface. And we'll just bounce into object viewer real quickly here. And actually, let me go into surface properties. And I'm just going to turn, I'm going to turn that EG off. I'm going to go here and turn on this graded surface. And you can see that the contours, it was flat around the building pad. We get some sloping down on the back of the building. And then if I go here, let's take a look at this in Object Viewer. And then you can see here, that's our building pad that we've created. Here's our building pad. Here's our flat region around it. We have it sloping down. And then we have our detention, storage, stormwater treatment right here. And then we have a sidewalk that's going out and around the building. And so that's in a nutshell, that's really what grading optimization can do. You'll also find that there's a ton of content out there in some way, shape, or form on it as well. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Just so happens that I decided to build a building pad, put some sloping off the sides of the pond and a sidewalk. So moving back over to my presentation here, and we'll just wrap things up real quickly here. So grading optimization, and one thing I wanted to leave you with is if you're interested in participating with new functionality and workflows, you can join the Autodesk infrastructures. It's if you have a Civil 3D subscription, then you have access to this, and it's a way to participate with development and basically get access to new features if you want to test them out, see how things are going. So for example, there's a lot of corridor targeting that came out with this new build, and this beta 3 build, and I got a couple notes from development asking me if you have any feedback for us. What do you think? So you're going to see some enhancements to the following with this new beta build: super elevation view styles, like I just said, the corridor efficiencies, and a lot of those pressure pipe features, basically just adding those pressure pipes and working with those pipe runs. And one thing to stay tuned for is the grading optimization update with 2022.2. Currently we have that .1 build out, and two things that you're going to see with that update is retaining walls. So you can optimize grading plan based on retaining wall design, and parking lots. Optimize grading plan for a parking lot with open curb geometry around the parking lot boundary. And I just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to dive into some of the new features with Civil 3D 2022. If you ever want to reach out or ask me questions or in some way, shape, or form, here's my email address. It's nphilbrick@topconsolutions.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well. But I definitely hope that you found something helpful out of this, and I really appreciate your time taking the time to learn some new features with Civil 3D. Thank you.